All right, everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Maccabee Media Group's The Command Center. I am your host, Richard Weiss. I'm an IDF veteran, and I am the founder of Maccabee Media. In today's episode, we're going to have a very special guest, a very close and personal friend of mine, Mr. Avi Bramer, who's going to be discussing with us the Ayatollah has been flushed, what comes next. And we'll also be talking about some of the pro-Pal and pro-Iranian regime protesters that are out there, and what the hell are they out there for? What are they trying to accomplish, and what are they doing? Without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Avi, and I'm going to bring him in right now. Hey, Avi, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Rich. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I can hear you loud and clear, and I can see you crystal clear, and it's a pleasure to have you on my show. So, go ahead.
No, it's awesome that you're doing this. I know you've wanted to do this for a long time, so I'm happy for you.
Well, thank you very much. It is a long time coming, and I love doing it, learning a lot so far. So in today's episode, we're going to discuss kind of, the regime is falling, the Ayatollah is gone, or at least the Khomeini. There's a new one who's, I guess, a dead man walking. But what is the world going to look like after the regime? How's the Middle East going to be reshaped? Are we going to see perhaps a new world order? So let's start with that. What do you think the ramifications of a regime-free Iran are going to be in the Middle East?
I mean, I think that a regime-free Iran or a altered regime in Iran will have immense benefits, not just to the Middle East, but to the world as a whole. There's aspects of the Iranian regime that have tentacled their way throughout the world that a lot of people don't pay attention to. But a regime-changed Iran will have positive effects, not just in terms of how it affects Israel, but the Gulf countries, as well as a situation like Ukraine. You look at a situation like Ukraine, a change in Iranian leadership will benefit the Ukrainians as well. The majority of drones that are wreaking havoc on Ukrainian civilians are Iranian manufactured drones. So there's aspects of the entire world that can be positively affected by this. It's a conversation that we can dive into about how much the regime will change moving forwards, but anything compared to what was there can be a massive, major positive for the world as a whole.
Well, I can absolutely agree with you 100%. I think it has to be said as well that Iran is not Iraq. They're not tribal savages living in Iran. I mean, the crown prince is basically ready to go. And as far as I can understand, he's made it pretty clear that he wants to be the figurehead, but not the boss, right? He doesn't have any intention of being a dictator. He wants to basically lead the people to an election and let them decide what happens next. What do you know about this crown prince?
I mean, I know that he's been very active in the West. He's gone on a bunch of speaking tours. He's very active meeting with politicians. I think the key thing to keep everyone on like a realistic trajectory is we have to look at what's best for the people in Iran. And it has to be, ultimately, it has to be up to the people of Iran. So I know there is a big movement in the Iranian diaspora that's very vocally behind the crown prince. But at the same time, I guess the best way to look at it is when we look at Iranian history, right, there's the coup in 1953 that installs the Shah. The Shah stays in power until the Islamic Revolution in 1979, and that's ruled Iran until this point in time. So when you actually look at Iranians and the history of Iran, it's been a very long time since the people in Iran have actually had the opportunity to forge their own future. Everything has been dictated to them. They went from the coup to the Shah to the revolution to the Islamic Republic, and they haven't had an opportunity to figure out what is Iran. So I think it's the best thing that we can do for Iran is offer that opportunity. Whether they then want the crown prince to come in, let that be up to the Iranian people. But I think that this is an opportunity and a moment in history where they can actually seize their destiny and have actual control of where that country moves from this point on.
It seems to me, based on pretty well all of the footage that I've seen out of Iran, of the people of the revolution, it seems they've all been calling for the Shah. It seems they've all been, hollering Javid Shah, long live the king. It appears to me they want him back. I guess I'm only seeing through the lens, of one side, but it appears to me that this could very well be the majority. Let's not forget, the Iranian people are not the regime, right? Like, that as well as I. Like, there's a night and day difference between the good people of Iran and the horrendous filth of the regime. The good people of Iran love us and we love them. The regime hates us and we hate them. Now, do you think that, some people did have some things to say about the original Shah, that he was a bit of a tight-fisted dictator? In this case, does the apple fall far from the tree?
I have no idea. I have no personal connections to the crown prince, and I've only seen speeches that he's given. One would hope that if he's going to play an important role in the future, that he would look at the grievances that people did have. One of the things that gets lost in the brutal regime that took over Iran is that the Islamic Revolution started under the quote-unquote Iranian Revolution, and the hardcore Islamists piggybacked on what was a pretty rampant student movement that was growing in Iran that were speaking out against the Shah. So it's one would hope that you can look at what happened and want to build on that if he's going to play an important role in the future of Iran. I want everyone who's rooting for the people of Iran to make sure that at the end of the day, it is the actual people that get to choose their destiny. And if they want this guy to come in and sort of guide what happens towards the future, then let that be. But it's got to be a situation that benefits the entire country. But yeah, to get to the point, the Iranian regime is in no means representative of the actual people of Iran. Like, the Iranian people are salt of the earth. They're some of the nicest, warmest, most forward-thinking people in the entire world. And one thing that really stood out to me is in the post-October 7th world, everywhere there's been a rally for Israel or a gathering of Jews speaking out against anti-Semitism, there's always been a contingent of the Iranian diaspora right there with the Jews. And that's something that we owe, like, it's immeasurable how much we owe the Iranian people. And the hope is that this actually leads to a free Iran. That's the ultimate goal. That should be everyone's ultimate destination, wanting a free Iran, because the Iranian people deserve it. All people on earth deserve freedom. Everyone should have the same freedoms that we have in the West. And that should be the hope of everyone. And that is my hope for the Iranian people. And we'll leave it to the Iranian people to figure out what their future looks like. But changing this regime has to be step one.
Well, further to your point about the Iranian people being good people and genuine people, I have to say that any one of their like freedom rallies that I've attended over the last 2 months, as soon as they found out that I was like a Jewish Israeli, they all like, "Oh my God, we love you. Thank you for being here. We love you. We love you." And you know what? I love them too. Like, they're such wonderful people. And they really, we have Israel, they deserve Iran. Like they've had it really bad under the Ayatollah, as you and I know, and I feel that once this regime is finished and there is a true free Iran, this brokers in a whole new era. I mean, you think about it, we have an alliance: Israel, America, India, Iran, UAE, as well as all the other countries that we already have peace with, plus the potential of a free and independent Kurdistan, a free state for the Druze. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, and it can only change the world in a positive way. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be mistaken, but I would say not all of the problems in the world right now, but most of the conflict in the world, a good 75% of it, I would say that Iran, that the regime is in the middle of it.
They're tied to the majority of issues, and you can find them everywhere. I won't give a percentage, but they're tied in. When you look at what's happening in, right, if you just break it down by region, you can look at what's happening in Afghanistan and the resurgence of Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, right? Al-Qaeda being led by one of the sons of bin Laden, who apparently was assassinated a few years ago, but by all intelligence reports is living happily and freely and openly in Afghanistan, rebuilding his father's organization. But you look at you look at Al-Qaeda and what's happening in Afghanistan, and there's Iranian involvement there, and all the Al-Qaeda leaders that now have moved back to Afghanistan, a lot of them got refuge inside of Iran. And you'd hear a lot about how the Iranians and Al-Qaeda hate each other, but the Iranian regime has always been forward-thinking, right? The IRGC, the Quds Force, especially when it was under Soleimani before Trump took him out, they were always forward-thinking. He was a very smart terrorist leader, Soleimani, and the Iranians got involved wherever it was beneficial to them. And if that meant providing refuge to an opponent in Al-Qaeda, then they would give refuge to that person in Al-Qaeda. So they're involved in Afghanistan and the trouble that's brewing there. They're selling the drones to the Russians that are killing Ukrainians. They're heavily involved in the drug trade that plagues a lot of stuff that's happening in South America. Right, a lot of what happened in Venezuela, there's Hezbollah involvement in Venezuela, and the IRGC are involved in what happens in the drug trade in South America, and they finance a lot of their terror activity through that. So they've got their hands everywhere. They're sowing discord throughout the Gulf, and it's a change in regime, however that looks, if done properly, can only be a benefit to the region and humanity as a whole.
Do you think that the lack of funding from the Iranian regime might finally silence the river to the sea watermelon losers?
I think that no, because I think they're getting a lot of their funding from other NGOs and other entities that will continue to fuel it. That side of it doesn't die with the regime in Iran, but it'll make things a lot better in the Middle East. And when things are better in the Middle East, it's better for the Jews in the West. One thing that I always hope for Israel is to be off the front page in Western newspapers, right? It would just be nice for them to exist as a country that isn't on the front page of the New York Times every Sunday edition, and a safer, more peaceful, more prosperous Middle East will help that and will make things better for Israelis, and that trickles down to the Jewish diaspora as well. But we'll see. We're in the early stages of an unprecedented event, and in the age of social media, everyone wants an answer right now, and you see a lot of politicians and activists going on X and tweeting stuff about, oh, well, what's going to happen? It's not happening. Well, it's been 36 hours. Like, change doesn't just happen in a blink of an eye, and you don't want change to happen in a blink of an eye. But in this age of social media, everyone wants something instantaneously. but that's not how it's going to happen. So people who claim to want the best for the Iranian people need to make sure that this process continues to play out.
You're 100% correct about people today wanting what they want and wanting it now. They don't have the patience like we do, my friend. It's a generational thing. 30 years ago, I used to wait 45 minutes for a picture of Pamela Anderson's breasts to download. And that was fast, 45 minutes.
It's a different world. Now it's on your phone in 2 seconds if you want it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And it's important for the Trump administration to stay on top of it and make sure. Like if I was the Trump administration, I would just have the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, doing all the press for this. Marco Rubio, I think, does an amazing job illustrating the points of the Trump administration in a very easy way that you can follow. But I think it's just important to keep people informed. Obviously, there are going to be people whose minds are already made up, but you can't focus on that. It's to make sure that we keep moving the ball forwards. That has to be the main goal, is that everything continues to progress, because you can't cut this mission short now, and you can't stay too long. So you have to make sure that you're following the plans that you've put in place. But changing something like this regime is not going to happen overnight. And I'm putting a lot of faith in a lot of people that I know have been working on this for a long time, that this wasn't a spur of the moment thing. This was well thought out, that there are ideas, and the process needs to play out. That's the most important thing, is that we allow it to happen so the Iranians can get that freedom that they deserve. That's got to be the end goal, and we have to just make sure that they stick to the plan.
Personally, I think that Rubio is the star, is the number one player, is the key guy of the Trump administration. I think he's the one that we can rely on the most. I think he's, in most cases, kind of the voice of reason, if you will. And I think as far as the Jewish community, as far as conservatism, as far as Israel, and as far as stability goes, best case scenario is that Rubio wins the next election. I'm not sure what I think about Vance. I'm not exactly sure where he stands. I'm not exactly sure how far I can trust him, but I certainly trust Rubio. And I certainly don't trust the Democrats, except for maybe Fetterman,
who is never going to be elected a leader of the Democrats in any capacity. He only votes with them like 99% of the time. So that's not enough. It's 110 or bust. I've been very impressed with what Rubio has done. I think he's been an incredible Secretary of State, along with all the other roles that he keeps getting. There was a joke on X yesterday that said Donald Trump is going to appoint Marco Rubio as the next Ayatollah of Iran. I thought that was very funny, but it goes to the performance he's had as Secretary of State, and the job that the Trump administration has done. What people don't realize, that we're in unprecedented times right now.
Yeah, history is changing.
This is a remarkable moment in time. I know that there's tons of chatter about how America and Israel, and they do everything together, and it's always because what Israel wants. But this is a historic moment where American and Israeli combat aircraft and the militaries are actually engaged in a war together. In June, American aircraft refueled Israeli aircraft, but it was the Israelis who did the bombing until Trump made that call to bomb the nuclear facilities. But this is the first time where they're actually coordinating and they're working together. You wouldn't know that if you listen to the talking heads who just hate Israel and want you to believe that America does everything with Israel for everything. This is a historic moment, and it's important to drown out the noise and focus on what's happening. And we really are in unprecedented times, and it's an amazing opportunity for the Middle East and for the world. And it would be my hope that there is enough of the population that can get over their hatred of the man in charge and focus on what's actually happening. And
Those people-
that would be my goal, my hope.
Those people who hate Trump because he's Trump, like Trump, the never Trumpers, they were out today protesting in favor of the regime. The waving regime flags on, like in Winnipeg on the corner of Portage and Maine. Like, it blows my mind that there's people out there, like, what are they trying to accomplish? Why, like, what could they possibly, like, how would don't they understand that they would be slaves to the regime as well? Like, do they want their daughters wearing burqas?
This is such a unique moment, because this is really the first time I can remember where the population inside the country being bombed is celebrating the countries doing the bombing. So we have a situation now where Iranians in the Iranian diaspora and in Iran are celebrating the death of the Ayatollah and are celebrating the bombing campaign. And we have a bunch of upper middle class white people in the West who are telling the Iranian people that they're wrong.
Do you think they know something the Iranians don't?
Like, do they know better than the Iranian people? Like, it's such a silly thing. Like, the Iranian people are celebrating, and obviously the Iranian people are not one monolith. So there are different viewpoints within the Iranian people, and within Iran, there's a large segment of the Iranian population that are more religious, that are more fundamentalist, that have supported the regime. So a future free Iran also has to accommodate those people. But the idea that these protesters in the West are actually cheerleading for the regime is, to me, it's so ridiculous I can't even explain it. I just kind of ignore it. The one thing that I will say is that the anti-war protests for this one are much smaller than you've seen in all previous conflicts, because I think even amongst some of the far left, there's enough common sense to say, wait a minute, the Iranians are cheering this on. Maybe I'll sit this protest out.
Yeah, well, when I drove by the pro-regime protest today, just to kind of see what was going on there, what I saw were generally a bunch of like confused white people, our age and older, you know, from the granola belt here in Winnipeg, in the Wolseley area. I mean, they're the usual suspects that, have like, it's constantly on the wrong side of history. Now,
just when you protest everything, it makes one question: do you have any actual beliefs? Because if you can go out and you can do the same chants and just replace the name of what you're chanting for, you question whether they actually have any real true beliefs. So yeah, we'll see. I try to ignore that. I always like to try that we focus on the silent majority, the majority of people who are working during the day or working a second job at night or taking care of their kids or doing all the other little things that most people have to do and don't have the time to go out all the time and protest. That's the segment of the population that we always have to focus on, because you're never going to be able to convince someone who goes out and holds an Iranian regime flag and chants about pro-Ayatollah things. You're never going to be able to convince them of anything. So it's important to focus on I don't want to say the normal people, because that can be taken as an insult, but on the silent majority who are too busy dealing with their day-to-day lives to have the time to picket every single event that happens in the world.
This is a free speech podcast. Feel free to offend anyone you want.
I try not to swear anymore.
It's good for ratings.
I was once told I was once told by someone in my family that I talk too much like I'm a character on The Sopranos. So I've been trying to curb the F words when I'm speaking. But yeah, it's such, this is an amazing time. We are in, like, it really is an unprecedented time. And I think one thing that we could talk about is what does the regime look like? What does change look like? Because regime change in and of itself carries a lot of negative weight and connotation, and is naturally and correctly an immediate turnoff for everyone when you hear regime change, because for the last 20 plus years, we've been dealing with the ramifications from failed regime change opportunities and choices that were made that messed things up. But it's also, I think it's good to talk about what is regime change and what does that actually mean. And I do think if you look at something like Venezuela, that can put a different sort of spin on what is regime change. Like, does regime change mean uprooting every single person that's been involved in the regime? Because to do that in Iran, you would need a lot more than just an aerial campaign, right? So are you uprooting, is regime change solely when you uproot every single person involved in the decision-making of the regime and then you replace them? Or is regime change where you remove sort of the people who have been making a lot of the decisions and changing how that regime acts, right? So a lot of the criticism in Venezuela is that they left Delcy Rodriguez in charge, right? They removed Maduro, but they left someone who was working directly with him in charge. But if
Mistake.
right? But so is that regime change? But what if in 2 years, if Venezuelan refugees who fled the regime can go back, and if political prisoners are released from prison, and if the police forces are reformed and people are stopping disappeared, and there is an election, the regime hasn't changed because Delcy is still in charge and she was part of the regime, but the regime changed because the things that the regime were doing have been altered, and that is also regime change.
Yeah, the party line has changed.
Right. So when we're talking about regime change in Iran, are we changing the regime like the entire regime is going to be uprooted and the militias are all going to be uprooted and the Quds force is going to be taken care of? Or are we talking about sort of what's happening? And I think that's going to be the model moving forwards, is not eliminating the entire regime, which requires ground troops and decades of being on the ground. I think there's an opportunity where we change the definition of regime change, and that can make life better, and it can do it in a cleaner manner.
What do you think is going to have to happen other than a complete, victory in war? But I mean, I personally think, and maybe we can discuss this for a second. I personally think that it's just a matter of time, not necessarily the IRGC people, but I think it's just a matter of time before the actual Iranian military defects to their side of the revolution. And once that happens, it's over for the regime. I also think, and let's be honest, I think the good people of Iran are done with Islam. I think there will be 90 less Muslims in the world, 90 million less Muslims in the world when this is done.
I mean, I think they could be done with Islam as practiced by the regime. Right. There was a time pre-Islamic Revolution, right, up until 1979, one of the best friends of the Israeli people were the Shiite Muslims in Iran. So we're not going to lose. They're not going to, right. Iran is a pretty, is a more secular state, which is interesting when you think about the regime and what they represent. But the Iranian people would fit the mold more of like a Western population as we describe Western society.
Very European.
But I think the key is let the Iranians decide what Iran's going to be, and a democratic Shiite country.
Fine by me.
Great, right? It's the regime and getting past that. But back to your point about the military, that's the key. I do believe that's the key is what happens moving forwards. Whether there is a coup, I don't know if the military makes a move. I don't necessarily think that's likely, but I think the military has to play a part in the future for the Iranian people. Right? What happened in Iraq, like Iraq goes to, I'll swear now, okay? I'll swear on the podcast, boost the ratings. Iraq goes to shit when they disband the Iraqi army. Right? They removed Saddam, they removed his leadership team, they removed the Saddam regime, and then they disbanded the Iraqi army, and in the blink of an eye, they took hundreds of thousands of soldiers and took away their means to an income. And that really kicks off the ball of who then joins the various terror organizations that pop up. And so the Iranian military will play a part in the future. I want people to be realistic, because Trump isn't going to put American boots on the ground. Like there aren't going to be U.S. Marines aren't going to be patrolling Tehran. So this is going to have to be a change in what happens based on the willpower of the Iranian people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I do think one of the ways you get there is to kind of follow the Venezuelan model that they did. Right? Like I think it's more realistic, right? Once you've killed, and they've done an incredible job of killing off most of the leadership.
In the first strike.
Right? They kill off most of the leadership, and that does present an opportunity for the military commanders and the people who are lower down on the totem pole to pause for a second and think about what kind of a future do they want. And I think there's a way that you can get freedom for the Iranian people without going full-blown Iraq-style regime change.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately what happens is at the beck and call of President Trump. Right? He's the ultimate decision maker. He will decide what happens. But I do think the Venezuelan model is the more likely approach that the Americans are going to take. It always piques my interest, right, when Iranian leaders are getting blown up all over Iran, but the foreign minister of Iran is doing live call-ins to American media, when you know that, right, you know the Israelis are listening into every phone call that leaves
Mm-hmm.
that area, but he's openly doing live interviews, right? Is he someone who's been talking with the Americans? Has there been conversation, right? We know with what happened in Venezuela that the CIA was speaking with Delcy Rodriguez. She was meeting with the CIA and talking about what happens post-Maduro. So have they been having those conversations with people within the Iranian regime to facilitate what happens next? So there's a lot of potential. Ultimately, it falls with how far President Trump wants to push this.
I think a lot has to be said, and we shouldn't discount the reach of the Mossad. I mean, the Mossad is on the ground, doing things, paving the way, marking targets. There's a special unit in the IDF called Shaldad, which translates to kingfish. And what these guys do, and I'm sure they're on the ground in Iran right now, what these guys do is they go in and they leave, like, they mark the targets for the Air Force when to hit when the strikes. So I'm pretty sure that these guys are on the ground first. And I'm pretty sure those are boots on the ground. I mean, the Mossad's on the ground. I read a story today posted by the head of the JDL, Mayor Weinstein, and he's a very reliable source, so I'll believe that what he said is true. And he said that the Mossad had infiltrated like dentists of the regime that the most prominent people of the regime, their dentist was an actual Mossad agent and implanting like tracking chips in their cavity fillings. And
Well, there's the story, right? I think they killed him, but Ahmadinejad,
Yeah, they did kill him.
the former president of Iran,
the dinner jacket.
right? Ahmadinejad, he told a story that the IRGC set up a unit to track Mossad spies, and the guy in charge of that unit
Mossad.
was a Mossad spy. Like, so it's a joke that I like to tell, but if you get 10 members of the Iranian regime, Iranian military officers, or 10 members of the IRGC in a room together, 4 of them are working for the Mossad.
Yeah.
Like the penetration of Israeli intelligence into Iran is something that someone will write a book about it one day. What they've done there is unbelievable. It's incredible the level of penetration they have. When you think about the fact that they had a war in June, right, where they had literally set up drone manufacturing bases inside Iran. So they're building we call them one-way drones, right? You can't call them suicide drones because you have to be politically correct. So they're called one-way drones, right? So they build these one-way drones inside Iran. They know exactly where the secret meetings are going to be, the emergency protocols. They're so ingrained. They conduct this war. They pull out hundreds of their assets from Iran. We know the regime arrests hundreds to thousands of people after the war in June. And then here we are half a year later, and they know where 3 separate high-ranking meetings, including the Ayatollah, are going to be. Like that level of penetration that's multi-levels of penetration. That's decades of being involved. It really is. It's amazing, and it feels unprecedented. And I can't wait to read that book, whoever writes it, when it comes out. But I think when you think about it, right? Everywhere large contingents, anywhere there's been a gathering, whether it's in Yemen or Lebanon or the Gaza Strip or Syria or Iran, whenever there's been a gathering of leaders, the Israelis have known where it is and they've dropped a bomb on it. But the Iranians are so worried about the Israeli penetration of their telecom systems and being tracked via their cell phones and their radio frequencies, and when they turn any on, right, their pagers, right, they're so worried about that they're still gathering 10 leaders in the same room. It's insane. That's how terrified they are. They're risking, knowing that if they gather, they're probably going to get killed, but they can't do that meeting via an encrypted phone line within Iran because the Israeli penetration is so great. Like, it's just, it is an unbelievable feat by the Mossad. And when you combine that with the strengths and the scope of what the CIA can bring, like, it's such an amazing alliance. I can't believe there are Americans that think it's better suited for the United States to not be allied with Israel. But when you combine the strengths of the Mossad and the CIA, it's scary what they can accomplish when they work together.
Now I had a pretty good feeling. In fact, I was 99% sure that the strike was going to happen, our time Friday night. I think you can probably say the same, and a lot of other people would agree with that. So how is it that if I knew that it was going to happen and you knew that it was going to happen, how is it that the Ayatollah was still in his compound? Like, shouldn't he have been in a bunker in the desert in the east of the country, like somewhere near Afghanistan?
I think that's
hubris.
It's hubris. I do think that they were going to be able to play. I think they thought that they could still play Trump the way they played the Obama administration.
I don't think
I think
Obama wanted this.
Whether one wanted to be played with, that's a conversation for another time. But I think the Iranians thought that they could just kind of slow walk the negotiations. I don't know how you watch the Americans park 2 carrier battle groups, a dozen destroyers, and 300 of the most advanced fighter jets in the history of mankind right in your neighborhood. I don't know how you watch that happen and President Trump tells you, like, negotiate. These are what we want you to do. We're going to go negotiate this, or we're going to kill you. I don't know how you don't take him at his word at this point. So there is hubris. Why? I mean, I know that they're now, the Iranians in their media are now spinning it that, oh, he wanted life to go on and he's just like every other Iranian, so he's going to be in his house. No, it was hubris to have that meeting at his home. But yeah, I just, at this point when President Trump tells you, do this or I'm going to get you, like at some point, this guy's got to be taken for his word. Like, you have to take this president at his word.
Yeah.
I know he issued a red line before and it kind of got pushed, but it does look now, with what we know in hindsight, it does look like the CIA and the Mossad were tracking all those leaders, and they were just waiting that all of this, they were waiting for the right moment. And I do believe that President Trump would have been happy to have this not have to happen if the Iranians wanted to give in to what the points that Trump wanted them to give into were. But yeah, it does look like they were waiting for them to gather. And then as soon as they gathered, yeah, they took out 30 to 40 of the leadership in the first strikes. Like, it's really amazing.
I think that you only get one chance to make a first strike like that first strike. And I think that's why they were very careful and cautious and, very, very deliberating and, very prepared to do this when they did this. Couldn't have done it any other way. It's not like George Bush Jr., like let's go, daddy. Like, this was like they did it the right way because they only had. Now, I think that we're getting close to running out of time here. I just want to kind of bring up one more thing. I'm getting reports from my sources that Islamic cells in Washington, D.C. and in Texas have activated. There were stabbing attacks, I believe, and shooting attacks in Texas, and the same in Washington. I don't have too much information. Do you think we're going to see a lot more of this? And I mean, you live in Toronto. That's that's probably, if something happens in Canada, like, do you think something will happen there?
I don't know. I do know that there has been a lot of IRGC Iranian regime officials that have been given refuge in Canada. So it's always a concern. Anytime you have a border as wide open as we do between Canada and the Great Satan, as they like to call the United States, that's always a concern. I don't think that it does appear that the shooting in Texas was an American citizen who, I know that he was found with a Quran and he had a shirt about Islam and he had the usual postings about hating Jews. I don't think he was their go-to sleeper cell agent. I do know that there's tons of intelligence about a massive Al-Qaeda sleeper cell presence in the United States waiting for their version of an October 7th attack. But no, I think anytime there's rhetoric as high as it's been and as hot as it's been for the last few years here, where everything is an existential crisis to someone, it ups the chance that there's a crazy person who's going to believe it and they're going to do something. No, I do know that there's been preps in Canada that have been foiled, and it is a concern based on what's been allowed to happen and sort of the inadequacies of Canadian law enforcement and
border enforcement
and the concerns that I know the FBI and the DEA have had with their Canadian partners. So that's always something that I don't always worry about it. That would be insane to always worry about it, but it's something that you have to be cognizant of. But I mean, we'll see. A lot of this happened because, right? All of this, like, I know we're wrapping up, so I'll keep it really short. But
it's okay if you can say what you got to say.
Right,
we got time.
October 7th happens, and Israel has rolled back the main threats of the Iranian regime. The worry about confronting Iran was always that would then allow Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad, entities that Assad allows to work in Syria, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shiite terror groups in Iraq, that they can launch attacks. But those proxy armies have been systemically rolled back and destroyed to the point where that was the Iranian regime's trump card, was that they could bring the fight to American and Israeli assets and people in the region. That's been rolled back as a consequence of the October 7th attack. Like, Hamas launches October 7th and it leads, look where we are now. Right, I'll end it on right. So there's two things I would end it with. Number one, almost everyone who over the last many decades whose lifelong mission has been to kill Israelis and Jews, almost all of them are dead now. Almost all the enemies of Israel and the Jewish people who have posed a legitimate threat are dead. And we're already into a better world based on that. Like, good has come out of what happened on October 7th, that all of these enemy proxy armies have been rolled back, have been scaled back, have been pushed, right? Is Hezbollah still there? Absolutely. They haven't been fully destroyed, but we've pushed their capabilities back, and that is a net positive for Israel and the Jewish people. But I guess one of the things that when something like this happens, right, when Trump actually made the decision to bomb those nuclear sites, that other presidents have waffled at that opportunity, but Trump did it. I truly believe, and it is something that I view for foreign policy wise, I believe that the world is a safer place when evil men fundamentally believe that the most dangerous, badass person on the planet is the President of the United States of America. When the baddest SOB on the planet is the President of the United States of America, it keeps people in line.
It's the language of the Middle East.
I think love him or hate him. We don't need to get into the politics of it. I do think there are a lot of people who view him as the baddest guy on the planet, and I do think that's better for humanity. I think it's just better for humanity when the President of the United States is viewed in that light.
Wow. Avi, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. You have an open invitation. I would like to have you back on here to discuss all sorts of things. I love the way you're very articulate. You speak very intelligently, and I certainly can't wait to have you back to discuss a whole bunch of other stuff.
Anytime.
Whatever you have time for.
Anytime. I'll get a haircut before that.
That's all right. You got the Meyer Tusi going on. So anyways, thank you everyone for tuning in. And thank you, Avi, for being a part of this. This is, we go online 2-3 times a week. Whenever something in the world is happening, you can expect to hear from me. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We are Maccabee Media, and now you're informed. Thanks, Avi.
No worries. Bye.